very much. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order, and Mark, you've got the roll.
Well, I'll just take the roll here and people can call out. So Peter Connor.
Here.
Nate Day. Nate, I think, was going to be absent. Oh, I don't see Nate.
Don't be Nate.
Tad Dockery.
Here.
Ken Markhart is here. Katie Nelson and Pete Moss are here.
Pete and I are both here, yes.
Dan Ramsey here. Dale Rhodes, are you here? I think Dale said he might not be able to make it. Okay, so he's not here. Ella Donner is here. Jim Schutz.
Here.
All right. So I think we have, let me just count them up here. Oh, and Carrie Scheffner is absent as well. So I think we have 7 present. Yep, 7.
So we're good to go then.
Yep.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda is the minutes of February 9th. Unless there's any questions, could I get a motion to approve those?
This is Katie. I'll move approval of the minutes.
Thanks, Katie. Can I have a second?
Second. This is Pete.
Thanks, Pete. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we are going to change the schedule just a little bit this evening and move up number 5 on-street accessible parking in downtown Middleton to move that up in the order.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was just going to say, we received this request for this agenda item from Alder Kathy Olson, who's present tonight. And so, Dan, I just assumed you want to turn it over to her.
Yep, Kathy, you want to fill us
yes,
in
I can
on
just,
what you're thinking?
I just wanted to, I was contacted, this is a couple times about on-street handicap parking. This isn't new to us. And I just come up with, Sean had asked about where would be potential locations. And I have no, I just threw these out here. I thought the one at the intersection of Hubbard and Parmenter, where that is kind of a funny turn with visibility problems, might be a good location to help with more visibility around that corner. It's a 4-way stop, but it should make much difference. And then by and it would also by the Villa Dolce, that has would be able to use the like if you have a van with a back access in it, people would be able to unload out of that. I didn't know if the streets were closed. One on Elmwood might be good, and that's the handicap access to Village Green in that area. And then I put one by the senior center. Someone had mentioned it at one time, Tammy. I don't know how the businesses feel about that because there is handicap parking in the parking lots. Another one I thought of today when I was out doing doors was, would it be worthwhile to have one by the Restoring Hope Transplant House? There might be people there that would want access to more on-street handicap parking. So I just am throwing these out there for discussion. So.
All right. Does any committee members have any questions about this?
Tammy, could you make some comments on this, please? I'll refer to you.
Sure. Of course, we continually get complaints on the handicap parking situation, although you're right, Kathy, in the parking lot, kind of all along that area closest to the senior center, there are handicap stalls. I have had participants ask me why there isn't one in front of the center, which is where your X is. I think there's a couple of things that are happening here, and that is that the senior center has really we've really expanded our programs, and we're really busy, and so finding parking spots out there is that while there's a number of them, they are mostly taken up during the day. I did a woman who complained that she wanted to attend a class here, but missed her class because she could not find an available handicap parking spot to park in. We do have sometimes for circumstances like that, we do have, what do I want to say, parking passes that we can give to people on a temporary basis so they can park closer to the building. So those are available. But this on-street one that you've got the green X marked on is one that comes up the most as to why we don't have one there. I think maybe they're not taking the other one into, or the other ones in the parking lot to account, but I know those handicap spaces take up a certain amount of more space there, and it's always, wall-to-wall cars along that road anyhow. So I just wanted to comment on that. I'm not sure we would ever have enough handicap parking here next to the senior
Yeah.
center.
Yeah.
Um,
The parking lot, Tammy, are the handicap spots time restricted like the other parking spots? They could be all day if they're handicapped, correct?
yeah, I don't believe someone might know the answer to this better than I, but I don't believe you can enforce that in a handicap stall.
Okay.
I think we asked that question one time.
Quick question that I have here. This is Mark. Tammy, you said something about handing out passes, but I didn't understand what you're handing them out to or for.
Oh, for seniors who have trouble walking and they want to be here at the center for longer than the 4-hour allotment. I'm sorry, I should have specified that, out in the parking lot. So they don't want to have to go move their car further away to avoid getting that ticket.
Thank you.
But it's just for the parking lot then, right, Tammy?
Yes, correct.
And Kathy, do we do parking and we do timed parking enforcement along all of those streets, don't we?
There is, yeah. They're not parked spots. I mean, if it were handicap, you would have to have it actually designated and not just fill in as the cars allow. So we'd have to have some designated. Yeah.
Can I say something here?
Please, go ahead, Tom.
The problem is that we need handicap parking, but we don't stripe parking spaces. So you're designating something that otherwise doesn't exist. And we have that problem throughout the downtown in Middleton. So I really wanted to bring two things to your attention. One is, I'm a handicapped person myself. I have bilateral hip tendinopathy, which means 100 feet of walking gets pretty painful. I can get further with a couple of canes or walking sticks cut down to cane level. But I can't get as far as, for instance, the center over to a restaurant without having to stop at least a couple of times. So we don't have handicap parking where we need it, but the problem is until you stripe the streets, you can't designate it all. And when we took this, my alder took this to Public Works and they said, no, we get more parking by what I refer to as the willy-nilly process. But if you walk through that area almost any time of day, but especially at night, people who park willy-nilly do so that it's easy for them to get in and out. So the inter-car gaps that they leave actually diminishes parking. Another reason to paint the stripes. So I'm hoping to get you to look into a couple of things: striping the painting in downtown Middleton, and then designating handicap spaces. I can at least get around. I can't get around very far, but when I think about someone in a wheelchair or on crutches, on a temporary or even a permanent, I mean, my cars have permanent plates for handicaps, so DMV thinks I'm handicapped enough, but But that doesn't help me when I try to get to, for instance, Philadelphia.
Mhm.
I managed to park a block away last night and, with the sticks, it was fine, but it seems selfish at times, but then when I'm standing there waiting for the blood supply to get back in my hips, it doesn't feel so selfish then,
Mhm.
So that's all I want to add. One begets the other. Striping makes designation possible.
Mhm.
Thank you, Tom. That makes a lot of sense. So how
By the
does
way,
the,
just before I go, do you
Yeah.
know how many on-street handicap parking spots there are in downtown Middleton?
There's 0.
Kathy?
0 is right. That's the correct
Mhm.
answer.
Mhm.
And according to the ADA, 10% or more of Middleton's population is handicapped.
Wow, I didn't know that, Tom. That's,
Yeah, it surprised me when I looked it up too. It's on their ADA website.
All right.
So thank you
So-
for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate your comments. So is any other comments from the community members? I think that this is a good idea, and I appreciate Tom's comments of, I think that the only practical way of doing it really is to have parking spots marked. I don't know how else he necessarily, I don't know how, I'm not sure how practical it would be not to do it. So I think that what we need to do with this is we need to determine if we think that these 5 are what this committee is interested in pursuing. And then we need to refer this over to the Public Works Department to have a discussion with them as far as how can we put these in and make sure that they are designated solely for handicapped. And again, as Tom said, I'm not sure that we do that without being able to mark spots. I'm really surprised when you think about it, if according to the ADA, we are 10% handicapped in Middleton, that would almost beg for 10% of the parking spots to be handicapped if you
Mhm.
I think that'd be a little overkill personally.
Mhm.
yeah, it would be a little overkill, but currently we have none. So
There's-
it's certainly an argument to move ahead and pursue getting some downtown, aside from what we have obviously we have in the parking lot.
I
There's,
might suggest,
there's another issue out there with the seniors is that a lot of them don't have handicap permits, but it's difficult for them to walk longer distances. And I know there's, in a couple of towns I've seen, they've got signage where it says senior parking only. I don't know how you would enforce something like that. But maybe a couple of more slots on the area 1 where it says senior parking may help alleviate some of the problems that Tammy has. The only issue is that we're taking, parking spots away from the rest of downtown Middleton, which could be an issue with the
Right,
businesses.
right.
All right.
And take this to the businesses also, so they're fully engaged in what we're trying to accomplish here, and giving them the statistics of what our population is that in need of these kind of spots. And I don't know, Tammy, are you in favor of the one by in front of? Okay, because I'm not
Yes.
sure how we had Grapewater and all the restaurants right there too, but I'm just, like I said, I just put these out here as starting, and no reason to be married to any of them, so.
But having said that, Kathy, maybe what needs to be done is this concept needs to be forwarded for the practical forwarded to Public Works, but then have the business association take a look at it.
Sure,
Are you on that?
yes, I
Are you
am.
part of that?
Yes, I am. And I just was, one thing that'd be helpful is if these are the spots you want to endorse, or if you want to add one up by restoring Hope House, or you give or take, how you want to, what you want to do. It'd be helpful to have some recommendation.
I keep saying I'm going to shut up, but then I keep having one more thing I want to say. I'm sorry. One way to make this move a little quicker and maybe to alleviate the pain and the grouching and groaning from Public Works is you don't have to stripe every space. I
Right,
think that
just the
leads,
handicapped ones.
yeah, I think that
Right.
leads to bad parking, but it might mollify. And the other point I wanted to make was, when I go downtown, the reason I'm there is to spend a lot of money in those businesses and those restaurants. So if they're concerned about losing business to a handicapped parker,
No.
my $180 bill last night should make them think a little twice about that. I'm really going to shut up now.
Touche,
So
Tom. I thought of that too. Businesses get all kinds of customers, handicapped or not. And your idea of not striping every spot is a good one, but maybe the handicap spot, but then the spots on either end, front side and the back side of that handicap spot also are striped so that nobody's
Encroaching.
making up that like 1.5 spots for their new fancy car.
Yeah, good idea.
Mhm.
Dan, may I
One-
make, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. One question I was going to have about the spot on Elmwood, if we're to discuss, would it be more helpful to have it closer to the Aurora intersection, or is it would you think that that's an appropriate spot, or for visibility?
Which one are you talking about?
It's the one that's furthest to the north. It's just that if it
Oh,
were by
sure.
the
Okay.
intersection, if it were like a
Yep.
V, they would be able to exit from the back if it was closer to the intersection if they needed to.
Yeah, maybe closer to the ramp corner.
Mhm. Well, it's for I just put these out there. Like I said, we can move them anywhere.
Isn't
That's a
there a
good-
couple angled parking in front of the bank there that they're angled?
Right.
parking?
Right on
Maybe
that,
something could be done there.
there's three spots or 4 spots. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but it would take 2 of those spots to do a handicap, wouldn't it? Tammy, you know better.
I believe so. I don't know what the dimensions of that
Or you,
are.
yeah,
Yeah.
or you could do 2 spots and have a shared exit area. Or I'm not sure how it all goes. I'm sorry, I haven't had enough time to really.
My
Get the-
personal opinion is it would be better to do it on street, because then you don't have to worry about it being wider.
Right, right.
So I think you save space and save parking by keeping handicap on street.
Well, my concern too is if they have an event where they close down this leg of Hubbard, then those spots wouldn't be available. So that would be my other concern.
Dan, may I make
Yeah,
a couple
Go ahead.
remarks?
Go
So I think I would be remiss if I didn't pass along the comments from the Public Works Director, the city engineer,
Mhm.
which I mentioned in the packet. And it took me a while to understand this, but I wanted to summarize it. In order to have a properly designed handicap spot or accessible spot, there needs to be a level surface on each side of the vehicle. So imagine Costco or Walgreens or wherever you would like to imagine a surface lot, and think about how there's always a space on each side. There's empty space on each side of the car.
Right.
Purpose for that is to provide a level surface in case somebody wishes to access or exit from the left side, the driver's side of the car, or the passenger side. And this drawing shows that concept on street. The reason why it bumps out is because if a vehicle is parked directly next to the curb, there might be 2 inches, it might be a foot, however close someone parked to the curb, it creates a gap. And so Sean's observation, I'm not saying that he's opposed to this concept, but Sean's concern is simply pointing out that the standards are to have a flat space that, doesn't have a big cross slope like you also have on a terrace, street terrace. So that said, there's the phrase, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And he and I talked about this because I support adding handicap parking spaces on street downtown. I figure, you know what, people who need a flat space can make that determination if that's more important to them, as opposed to the many people who can get by with, stepping out onto a curb. So I feel, I think this has a lot of merit to look at options here that are on the street. They just might not be designatable as fully accessible handicap spaces. So he and I talked about the idea of a sign, finding some sort of authorized sign that conveys preferential parking for people with limited mobility. And ideally we could use the handicap sign, but maybe somehow conveying that we need areas that are, like you see in I think Walmart has this, or certain places that, reserved for seniors or reserved for, I think I've seen them for pregnant women. I've seen there's different signs out there, and we could find one that conveys to the public that these are reserved for people with limited mobility. The second, so I just wanted to pass along the design issues that he cited. And there isn't necessarily a standard for this. It's just, he just wanted it to be, you to be aware of that. The second observation I want to make is that we have an issue with loading with truck deliveries that sometimes, and Tammy, you've seen this, I'm sure, with Grapewater and Louisiana's. The vehicles will sometimes park in the street and block a travel lane because they don't have any other way to access the business, close proximity to the business. So I have wondered whether there's a way to have a shared loading zone and have the loading zone be available, let's say only in the morning, until noon or 11, and then have that be shared with accessible parking. Again, finding a way to kill two birds. I hate that phrase, but to find a way to meet dual purposes. And then the last comment is, let me check my notes. Oh, and somebody already said that is you don't have to stripe all the spaces on the street. I think some of these locations, especially this one on Elmwood, for example, this is here at Aurora Street, and this is obviously one parking. Well, it's also yellow. Never mind, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But there are options where you could have the spot closest to the curb, where the ramp is, to be the designated spot. So that would help, obviously, strategically locating some of these so that you're not in mid block, for example, where it's harder to provide the vehicle space. So those are my comments. Happy to research this further.
I like where that's an abandoned driveway on the right. Maybe
Right.
that would, yeah. And it would allow for exit from the rear of the van, if that was designated.
Right.
Just saying, yeah. And this, you're thinking the loading zone for semis, right? It would have to be a big, accommodate a large vehicle.
I don't know that I would be an advocate for that, because those take up a lot of space. And I don't know how many delivery trucks come by semi. I think quite a few. I've seen quite a few vehicles that are not semis that are doing deliveries. I did come up with a map a couple years ago, and Kathy, I don't recall if I shared that.
Yeah, I did see that. I'm just thinking, and just throwing it out there, what about that drive between the visitors center? And could they go pull in there and do their unloading, and then is that too far out of the way?
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to commingle and de-emphasize
I
the need
see.
for
I
accessible
forgot
parking.
about the parking there. I forgot about the indoor parking.
Yeah. So I just wonder whether there's a way, a mutual, a way to achieve benefits for dual,
Mhm.
to have a shared space for both types of uses, especially if it's not a formally designated handicap spot.
Mhm.
So I'm happy to research this further. If you just, I think the discussion about where these should be is very helpful.
Well, I like the locations where they're at, but I think that it's a very good point to have it where there is, like where that abandoned driveway is, so that it's easy for people to get, out of their car and up to the sidewalk with no curbs. So I think as we look at spots, wherever we can find spots that would be most advantageous that way.
Mhm.
So I think that where we're at on this is, I get the sense that the committee is in support of the concept of this. We're gonna have to do some more work as to where those spots would be. That would be thing number one. And then thing number two would be getting with Public Works and looking at the options of what kind of signage. And my one question about some of that signage that you mentioned, Mark, is, does that allow us, do all of those signs allow us to do an enforcement? So I'm sure we must have some kind of, there must be some kind of standard signage that we have to use in order to be able to enforce those as handicap spots, I would think. So that would be something to find out too.
Well, and Sean's responses, I bet, would be, if it's not officially meeting all the criteria for a handicap space, you probably shouldn't sign it. I mean, that's where we're going to have some discussion. I do think we as a community are for lack of a better word, kind enough or observant enough to respect these optional signs. I mean, if you look at grocery store parking lots, the ones I mentioned where they say this is reserved for certain customers, those are generally available. When I see those, they're usually there's usually some empty spaces. So I think people generally respect those signs. So I'll do some research with Sean, and anybody else who has ideas and wants to surf the web at night when you can't sleep. If you see signs, pass them on to me. And I will see what we can come up with Sean working with, and I'll come back to this committee with the next meeting and have some suggestions.
And being mindful of the street project that's going to be happening, if we want to move forward with some things that would be in conjunction with the street project, we might want to get that designated.
Okay.
I'm so sorry to say one more thing.
We'll let you.
Mark, we have a place in Sister Bay. Sister Bay is incredibly good about not only striping their parking, but they have an abundance of handicap parking on street, including the curb. So the regulation that you showed us, they somehow have been able to, I'm going to say, find some gray space. And it might be worth checking with Sister Bay to find out. I mean, obviously, they have tons of people all summer long that need handicap parking. And they didn't do big carve outs on sidewalks or anything. They have it right on curbed street. So they found a way to do it.
I'm looking at Sister Bay right now. Okay.
So Mark, that's some information that you can take to Sean, and Sean, you can take a look at that and see what we can do to.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, interesting. Now it's gone. That was in 2013. This is 2018.
Well, there's even more of them just like that now.
Here's
like-
one. Interesting. Okay, yeah, that's a great, again, if anyone knows of examples, I didn't see any signage here, interestingly enough. They didn't have any sign indicating that, but just the pavement on the street. But
Right.
well, yeah, if you can think of other examples, let me know. I'm happy to. The nice thing about Google is you don't have to drive somewhere. You can just look at it. So, okay.
All right, very good.
All right.
You
you.
need anything more on that, Mark? Or are you good?
No, that was a very helpful discussion, and I'm happy
Okay.
to do some research for the next meeting.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, let's move on back up then. We'll go to the next agenda item, observations from the post snowfall walk. Tad, I think this is yours.
Yeah. All right, so we, let's see, who did we have attending? We had me, Mark, and Katie, and George Zentz was also there. We met at the corner of Century and Donna, right next to the UW Credit Union branch. As you can see from that first
Sorry.
picture, crossing the street, the refuge in the middle was uncleared. The plows going through after clearing of the ramps into the street meant that the ramps in the street into the street were also blocked again. Sidewalks are narrow. Shoveling is often only partially done along that particular stretch, or not done at all, leaving that very narrow. You can see the trash cans are still out. That's actually not a big deal. I don't know why I bothered. Okay, let's scroll down. Well, one comment I do want to make. George noted on the walk on that side that he would not normally walk that direction because we were walking away from the traffic coming up from behind us. I think this is an interesting observation, but it's not. And there's a lot of intuitive sense to it, but it's not a luxury that residents on the south side of the street have, because there are no mid-block crossings. All right, so the bus stop in front of the Quick Trip you'll see is partly blocked. It was cleared, but then the plows came by, kicked the snow back up. This is a common feature again along the entire length of Century. However, the clearing and the plowing is done are not coordinated. The Allen Century intersection. Yes, everyone's favorite intersection. There's standing water in the ramps. This was hardly unique to this intersection, but it's just kind of especially prominent there. The markings are faded. It's a 3-stage crossing that takes a very long time. And again, Allen. Not only that, it is not short enough. I'm not short. It is much too short. It is not long enough. It was barely long enough for us to get across, and we were 4 fairly able-bodied people able to skip across the water in some cases. Not that we did. Keep scrolling. And then once we reached that intersection and crossed the street, we headed back north. We headed west again on the north side of the street. This is across from the Quick Trip. You'll notice the standing water on the sidewalk. This is a feature of winter because snow piles up on the terrace and on the lawns. All meltwater in flat or dipped areas just kind of collects there. Back up closer to where we began, where that narrow sidewalk, that stretch is actually particularly treacherous because of this kind of effect. The water will melt, it will run down during the day, and then it will freeze at night. So you have sheets of ice on a sloped sidewalk. Yeah, so that's just that one little stretch of Century after a snowfall. Other
Okay.
questions? Comments?
Did you mention the LPI at Frank Lloyd Wright, the delayed time? Did you mention that?
No, I didn't. That's correct. When we pressed the button to cross the street at Century, we were the only people there. We pressed the button. A car arrived several seconds after and got the green arrow ahead of us. This is the thing that I have been complaining about for a year and a half now. Yep. And we did also test the LPI down at the crossing of Century for the Conservancy, just to see it in action.
Mhm.
And we noted the significant difference. Another thing I wanted to mention, it was very loud. We frequently had to yell to each other to be heard, despite standing in fairly close proximity. This was not because it was clogged with cars. There honestly wasn't all that much traffic. Cars are just that loud, and Century does not do. Century encourages high speed in excess of 35 miles per hour, which is well over the posted speed limit. As a result, the tire noise of the cars is extremely loud, no matter how few of them there actually are. It's pretty reasonable to assume at one point I mentioned that because of the reduced traffic, I will frequently cross mid-block even without a crosswalk, because it feels safer to do that than to cross at the officially designated crosswalks at the lights. And then a little further down the sidewalk, we in fact saw someone doing that. They had crossed the north side of the street. They'd stopped. This was between Branch and Allen, where there's a section of refuge. And so they had crossed. They were waiting in the refuge for another opening, because that's a pretty reliable thing. And again, it's quite a distance between those intersections. I believe it's about a quarter mile between Branch and Allen.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, probably pretty close. So, just a few observations. Obviously, as we all know and have experienced, whether you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or even a auto enthusiast, Century Allen is terrible, and it's no good. One of the things that this committee is going to become more involved in, and Mark and Sean Elsrud are going to be working together on this, is getting more involved with the 5-year streets plan. And in our last 5-year streets plan that the Public Works Committee just looked at a week or two ago, we looked at Mark, was it 2026? I think it was 2026.
I don't know what you're going to say.
What's that?
I don't know what you're going to say, so I don't know.
Well, we're looking at the county was looking at resurfacing Century Avenue.
Oh, okay, yep.
And as part of the resurfacing of Century Avenue, the Public Works Committee put forward a motion to put some money in the 2025 budget to redesign the intersection at Century and Allen, because it's, like I say, as we've all discussed, it's a terrible intersection. So the opportunity to be able to do something with that, and this committee to have an input on that, is going to be coming down the pike, where we'll have much more say in what's going on. And some of the things that you showed in some of your pictures, Tad, I'm just not sure that there's really anything that can be done. Just, it's the nature of where we live. I don't know how you tackle standing water or freezing and refreezing. It's just
some of those things are the nature of where we live.
Yeah.
Some of it,
the nature of
a big part of it along here is narrow sidewalks. The sidewalks are only 3 feet wide as designed, and due to lawn encroachment, they're frequently narrower even in the summer. So that means that snow collects very close. Again, where we were walking on that narrow sidewalk, that was that narrow because the people there do not shovel the entire sidewalk. Nobody ever complains to the city, so it never gets done. I have now used the snow complaint system on the website exactly once. It's a pretty frustrating system to use. I have to log in, and then I have to find the form, and then I have to, and because of this, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to take my gloves off and log into the system on my smartphone out on the street and then stand there filling out the form. So I have to remember to do it when I get home. A lot of people don't care because they drive everywhere, so it doesn't bother them. So the narrowness of the sidewalk plays a huge role into it, because I also walk through the part of the Parkside Heights neighborhood along Donna Drive. When I do, if I'm walking along Donna Drive and then south to University during the winter, I walk on the sidewalks only as far as Meadowbrook, and then I dodge off to Meadowbrook and Brookdale to cut the corner. These places do not have any sidewalks. They just have a street. As a result, the street gets plowed. The street is nice and flat, and the street is dry and easy to walk on. And there's no cars almost ever. The sidewalks in that area, in contrast, they're buckled by frost heave and tree roots. They get shaved into these shapes. So part of it is some of it is the snow, but a large part of it is simply the difference in the way we used to design and still design and maintain sidewalks versus roads. That's actually an issue on the hill too. The hill on Century there between Frank Lloyd Wright, Donna, and Branch, it's quite steep. This isn't a big deal for cars, but it's a big deal for runoff. It's a big deal for people trying to walk. I thought it was going to be a bigger deal on a bike, and it was at first, but I eventually got used to it. Likewise, another big place that the water pools is at the curbs. So when we crossed Amherst Road, there was a significant amount of water pooled in the curb cuts, but Amherst Road is completely flat. The reason that the water pooled there instead of draining away is partly because of the snow, but mostly because the curbs are designed in such a way that the snowplows push these snow dams right up into the gutter. The water pools into the gutter, and so there's no water standing on the crosswalk. There's only water standing on the entries. One of the reasons I brought up continuous sidewalks way back when we were talking about Elmwood and Park is because continuous sidewalks drain the water off into the street, and so they create a drier walking environment. Now, we'd have to figure out what that means for snowplows. I know the UW manages to do it so at several locations, so I know it's doable. Sorry, I could ramble on, but
No. Well, and again, I understand some of the issues that you're talking about. I also know from a practical standpoint that these issues are most generally dealt with when we redo a street, or like I said, we're going to have an opportunity.
Yeah.
We're going to have an opportunity to weigh in and have some input on what Century and Allen is going to look like. And kind of that entire length to a certain extent. I mean, we're redoing Century. We're not going to tear out all the sidewalks and start over. That's just not in anybody's budget, not in any world. But incrementally, we can at least change some things. But it's all got to be in from a financial standpoint, and that's just the way of the world. It's got to be done in conjunction with another project.
Yep, but it's good to be talking about it now, because otherwise we'll continue doing the same things we've always done.
Which is why it's very important that this committee, and it's only been within the last year that this committee will take a more active role. I pushed for a more active role in the 5-year street plan, so that there'll be more, Bike and Ped will actually have more input into making some of these changes and helping it become more pedestrian safe. So while we're not going to solve all the problems, there is opportunity for us to start having some actual input into some of these solutions of these problems that you're talking about, which I think is a good thing. So, we'll count on you, Tad, to kind of push the envelope a little bit as you do. So you're our resident envelope pusher. So, all right. Does anybody have any comments to Ed's presentation?
I wanted to bring up one thing, and that's about this is Jim.
Yep. Thanks, Jim. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, my computer got hacked and I'm speaking on the phone. As far as the mid-street refuge, who's responsible for clearing those? Because I'm very familiar with the one on North Avenue and Park Lawn. And, you can be a week and a half after a snowstorm, and you go across the street, you have to go around that because it still has snow on there and never gets cleared. So I'm just wondering, because oftentimes on the committee, we will mention those as a benefit to pedestrians, and I definitely think they are 8 months out of the year. But just wondering about who is the city responsible for clearing that?
I would say the answer to that is yes, because it's within the right of way. It's between we expect homeowners who live on corners to clear the ramps, but I'm not aware of any homeowner that then goes into the street where we have these pedestrian refuge islands. Actually, I didn't even have to go to that one that you referred to, because we had one in the packet, as Tad noted. So right here, so that's a very good point. I will pass that. Yep, I'll pass that along to our public works staff as a reminder for next year to make sure we take care of that. I mean, given that the focus is on plowing, and that sometimes when plows do a second pass, they then come back up and cover what people have removed. Few people want to do something twice. But it doesn't mean that I mean, the city does go by and do bus stop clearing. And this should have been taken care of, although was this like a day? When did it snow here, Tad? I couldn't remember. It had snowed the day before?
Yeah, it had snowed the day before.
Yeah.
Well, right. And in that case, it had clearly been cleared, and then just slush had been kicked up.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a big snowfall, and actually that made it easier then to walk, because it had melted enough and was warm enough. Obviously, as you can see, this was on February 17th, I think. I guess I didn't put a date on there, but it was mid-February. So, you know, the conditions here were better than they often are after a snowfall. You know, this is a fairly minor accumulation, but it still is an accumulation that could impede a wheelchair. So, you know, these are things that the public works staff will come back and address after they're done plowing, but there's only so many staff, and the prioritization is to get the roads cleared. We also have problems, as we all know, at intersections where plows come by and it's hard for them to make a tight corner. So then, you know, I used to live on a corner and there was probably, not exaggerating, at least probably 5 feet of snow from the curb out into the street where the streets intersected, you know, where it was a squared off where the plows went, but that curve, that sweeping curve had snow in it, and that was like that for days. So depends how much snow and how busy the crews are, but obviously some of the details for pedestrians are not prioritized as much.
Okay, Mark, can you check with Public Works then to see what their policy is on getting those cleared out?
Yep.
Thanks. Any other comments? Thanks, Tad. Let's move on to agenda item number 2, Middleton Shores Development, Transportation Linkages.
Yeah, this is here because this is a development concept that's on the agenda for next week's Plan Commission meeting. And I wanted you all to be aware of it because it includes some pedestrian bicycle features that I just want you to be aware of. So this is at the corner of Century and Allen Boulevard, northeast corner, Middleton Shores Apartments. One of the buildings they're proposing to redevelop a 20 unit building into a 110 unit building. And yellow shows the existing pedestrian path, this 10-foot wide path that we installed called the North Mendota Trail. They envision, as part of this project, it's a 2-phase project, they would like to run a path along Marina Drive. And I had it, let me go back over there now. So Marina Drive is this street to the east. So here's Middleton Shores, our favorite intersection. And then Marina Drive is here. You can see the North Mendota Trail. Should be available on one of these street view images. I think this one shows it already from October 2021. And so what the property owner here would like to do is work with the city. This is right of way that the city owns, and extend the path into along Marina towards the Conservancy. And so that's, I think, a really exciting addition to when that happens, would be a very nice addition to our trail network. But then the biggest issue is the intersection of Century and Allen. As we all know, and as we just discussed, it's one of the most hostile intersections in the city for pedestrian activity. Multi-stage crossing, three crosswalks to go south and 3 to go east-west. Actually 4, technically. It is 4. So if you were leaving McDonald's with a Shamrock Shake, you'd have to cross here. This is the 2nd, this is the 3rd, and here's the 4th crossing to get to Harbor Athletic Club to work off the Shake. So just to use that as an example. And that's more that I'm saying that for my own benefit, because that's really what I should do when I have one of those. So this intersection, as Dan noted, needs to be reimagined, redesigned, irregardless of the development. It's an issue today. So that's all I had to report, Dan, was just to point. Oh, actually, the other thing I was going to mention is there is a path that was put around the west and north sides of Middleton Shores. Penny Klein, our former public lands manager, did that 10+ years ago. It has not been maintained or kept up. There's been some erosion. It's in many places overgrown. So that is why this is shown here. If this path goes in here along Marina Drive, I think that provides a better connection anyway, but that's the other pedestrian feature here. And then they also plan to have, you don't see the detailed drawings, but they plan to have, they have a nice you see some of the sidewalks through their property, so they will have internal circulation as well. That's very appropriate. So that's what I have.
Mark, have they indicated any kind of timeline?
So what's going to the Plan Commission next Tuesday is what's on the agenda is a public hearing on the rezoning application and also related to conditional use permit. If the city is inclined to approve the project, they envision breaking ground in spring of 2025.
In spring in 2025?
Yeah. And then they have a second phase eventually that they are now saying about 2029. That's the eastern part of the project, the eastern part of the property. They plan to redevelop that as well with something similar, but that's conceptual at this point. They are meeting with neighbors. I attended one of those neighborhood meetings this afternoon. So they are working with neighbors to discuss their project. We did receive public comment from someone who's on the call, Kristen Kleckner. She's so I provided that to you this morning as well.
Yep. So if they're looking at breaking ground in 25, construction wouldn't be done till 26. So potentially, and Center Avenue being done in 26. So potentially there would be some time to maybe alleviate some of these concerns. I would encourage, since this is just add a conditional use and a rezoning, and I understand that there's going to be concerns about density, and there's going to be all traffic, pedestrian, bike safety. There's going to be a lot of concerns about these things. I would encourage anybody that has concerns and wishes to make a public comment that they would come to the Plan Commission public hearings. And we're hybrid, so you can do it online. You don't have to be in person, although the committee does meet in person. But I would encourage anybody with concerns or suggestions or questions for the developer, if at all possible, to attend that meeting. And that's on this next week's agenda, Mark?
Yeah, 7 p.m. We just posted the meeting packet an hour ago. The developers' submittal of their site plan and building elevations are in that packet on the city's website under meetings, committee meetings, Plan Commission meetings. You'll find that information. And the hearing's at 7 p.m.
So yeah, right at the beginning of the meeting. So for all those that have concerns and would like to speak to this and be able to ask questions, I would encourage you to come Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
And I will add that we are recommending at the staff level that the commission not take action that night and just postpone any discussion because we figure there'll be a number of public comments, and also we are requesting additional information from the development team.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mark. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Kristen, do you have a quick comment?
Yep. So I brought it up a few years ago about having an RFB possibly at Tomahawk or Marina. That could be a part of, especially Marina, could be a part of this development. The only reason I'm bringing this up is this is not necessarily development, but it's city. Because crossing at Allen and Century is going to get that much worse with this development. And just like Tad was mentioning, that most people choose to cross not at the corners, but mid-block. I would really like it to be revisited to have the crossing at Marina or Tomahawk with an RFB.
Very good. Thank you for your comment. And that's something that that we, this committee on a couple of different occasions have asked that be part of any work done on Century Avenue. So that we'll move forward with that. But thank you for your comment. Anyone else? All right, then we will go to Let's see, what are we on? We are on the alignment of shared use paths and Bell Farm development.
Yeah, I went back and looked through our records of meetings, and I could not find that the Ped Transit Committee had ever weighed in on the Bell Farm development, and I was surprised by that, and I apologize if I missed that. Obviously, we've taken through the Plan Commission, we've discussed the path that's going to connect. Let me get to the agenda item here. Here it is. So I made this drawing to indicate the path, just for context. Let me show you where this is. Let's see, let's make north up. So this is over northwest of Graber Pond. Parmenter Street is here on the left, our Middleton Operations Center at the upper left, Graber Pond. And this is Bellefontaine Boulevard, which is envisioned to connect with Schneider Road. And I think you have weighed in on this in terms of the design of the road in the past. But what I want to bring to your attention is now as the preliminary plat becomes the final plat, this is what the development team is proposing. This is my drawing on top of their a map that they provided. But I wanted to create this color drawing to show the linkages or the network of the trail system that's being planned. The city is planning with Parmenter Street to, when that gets rebuilt starting this year, we're going to have a path on the east side of Parmenter Street, south to Century Avenue. To the west, what I don't have along here is the Highway 12 bike path that's just off the map here. And that's, of course, existing. That's been there for 20 years, north-south path. So this will connect to the west with the Highway 12 path, to the south with the city's path. And then here to the east, on the east end of the pond, is an existing path. Here, I'll just show you the paths since I have the drawing. So here's the Highway 12 path along Schneider. So we'll have this little gap here, if you can see where I'm pointing. This will be filled and connect east. We'll have the path on the east side of Parmenter Street. And then we have the existing trail system through the Misty Valley, Middleton Ridge subdivision that ends right at this development site. And so this green connection here is intended to continue that path. There will be a short 150-foot stretch that's not connected, that requires on-street travel, which is a disappointment to me. I've advocated a different solution, but this is as far as we've gotten. And then we are also planning a path along the length of Bellefontaine Boulevard. You've seen that with the Red Tail Ridge subdivision. So that is an exciting addition to the north side of Middleton as Bellefontaine develops. There'll be an off-road path along the length of Bellefontaine Boulevard. So I just wanted to run this by you, make you aware of this, see if you had any comments that we would incorporate into future Plan Commission review.
Does anybody have any comments or questions for Mark?
Are we gonna make the eastbound direction following Bellefontaine take over the southern alignment of Bellefontaine? Because that'd be awesome.
Yes, so what you're referring to, Tad, is this.
Yeah.
We designed Bellefontaine Boulevard years ago, 10 years ago. This was intended or envisioned to be a future 4-lane road with a boulevard. That's why it's called a boulevard. And so the sidewalk was placed along the edge of the right-of-way, and you can even see where the road was intended to be, where the additional lanes were, the future eastbound lanes were intended to be. We have since, in the last year or so, decided that we don't need a 4-lane on the north side like this. So we are going with a 2-lane design. So this can and should be replaced with a path, a 10-foot wide path. But as this gets carried forward to the west and to the east, the right-of-way won't be as wide because we've decided not to go with 4 lanes. So this will be essentially a linear park through this development. And then to the east at Red Tail, once it crosses High Road, it'll be a narrower, more traditional cross section. And you've seen that cross section before. So I guess my main question is, how do you feel about this gap this section of path. This is going to be a relatively lightly traveled part of the road. You know, the black was just intended to convey pavement. You know, the roadway here is not going to have as much traffic as Bellefontaine itself. But I'm just wondering what your reaction is to this. There's three lots, 3 houses that will front this road here.
Any comments?
Well, this is Katie, just that I would have been more concerned, only you just said this is not a very high traffic area. Will there be bike path on that section?
I don't know that if they're at that detail, you know, if there would be, when you enter the street.
Bike lane, I mean, I'm sorry.
Bike lane, yeah, no, I understood what you meant. I don't know how that will be. That's why I'm bringing this up to you. You know, I guess I look at this as it'd be nice to continue the path and just have to cross at a crosswalk, although this is at a sharp curve, you know, a 90-degree curve. But you know, that can be done. This is a 2-way road, and then have the path in the front yards. I mean, that would be one way to carry that path forward. You know, because otherwise, what will happen is with 2-way car traffic and 2-way bike traffic, you know, people will cross and you know, my guess is westbound bicyclists will go, you know, gravitate into the proper lane to go west, and eastbound likewise. There are examples in Madison where the path that runs through the isthmus, where for a few blocks you have to take the street, and people bike on the right side of the street, and those are generally low volume routes, low volume vehicle routes. My main, what I've been trying to nudge the developer is to accommodate the path the entire length of the path, instead of just, you know, using the street at this point.
It seems like the right time to do it.
What was the developer's rationale for not? Can you refresh our memory? There was some issue. I don't remember what it was though.
Well, I think, Dan, when you saw this last, they were trying to get the path connection up here on the east side. That was their intent. They weren't even going to put this part along the pond. I actually always recommended this alignment because it brings people to the pond. You know, you come down the hill, it's very hard to see the contours here, but there's some topography, you know, a change in grade. This will drop down towards the pond. And so I just felt that this was a way to get people, you know, access to the pond. So initially I think they just wanted to maximize the developable area. And they also pointed out that they have a path already, an east-west path along Bellefontaine. But now that the path is coming this way and they basically have parallel paths, you know, how important is it to have this gap filled in? We don't have an on-street linkage like this anywhere else in our trail system that I can think of. And I'm just worried that, I just feel like let's go for the ideal solution now while it's under, you know, before it's developed.
I totally agree.
I agree as well. And that the angle on the east side really bothers me, where a westbound cyclist is going to have to turn all the way around to check for cars coming up behind them because they're merging in at a sharp and very strange angle.
Well, keep in mind, this is meant to be conceptual. It's not actually designed.
Yes,
but,
I understand, but I mean, you're gonna have to do something. And like you said, it seems weird to not just continue it in front of the houses and then cross at right angles at that curve. And maybe that is the intent. They should, or maybe you should draw better. Someone should draw better. Sorry.
Well, if that's, you know, and I wanted to run this by you to see how you felt, give you a chance to weigh in. This is, you know, it's better to weigh in now before there's final approval than to ask afterwards. But I think if you're feeling strongly about recommending to the Plan Commission that the path continue, you know, replace the sidewalk with the path for these 3 houses, You know, and then it will cross here at this curve, but having it in the midpoint of the curve, you know, I mean, that's maybe not ideal. I also thought about having it be right here, if you can see, like in this, between the backyard of these houses, and have it cross there, but I don't remember what this land use is. I think this was a commercial land use. Can't remember what that is. So anyway,
And that gets a little wonky too.
What's that?
That gets a little wonky too with coming
Yeah.
down, so. So
Actually,
I think
the
that
analogy-
everybody kind of agrees that it's kind of strange that it just ends, jumps on a street and goes back to path. So
Actually,
if the
here's the
recommendation of
analogy.
the committee is that they would prefer to see it connect, then somebody should make a motion to that effect.
This is the closest analogy I can think of in our path system, where we have by Hidden Oak subdivision, where we have a path that you know, replaces the sidewalk with a 10-foot path, and then it crosses here kind of on a curve, albeit not as steep. But maybe this is the best analogy we have to you know, in the city, the best example. All right, I'll shut up now.
So Mark, you're wanting a motion to recommend that we add the path along the residents' front yards? Is that the wording you're looking for?
If yeah, I mean, if you,
that's what you're interested in, Katie.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Okay.
and to whom am I recommending this? Planning?
yeah, why don't you recommend to the Plan Commission, you know, expressing the concern of the, you know, that there be continuity in the path.
Yeah.
That you would prefer to see path continuity, and recommend that it be placed, that it take the place of the sidewalk in front of those three houses.
Yes. On recommendation from Head Bike Transit, we recommend to Planning Commission that the path stay continuous and consistent throughout Bell Farms, and that the bike path take the place of sidewalks in front of the residents to keep the path consistent and safe. If I
Thanks,
said-
Katie. Do we have a second to that?
Second,
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Did you get the second, Mark? It would seem like a tie, so
It
I
was-
wasn't sure who got there first.
So you tell me who you're recognizing.
Jim, I heard Jim's voice, I think.
Okay,
Yep, okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
and
Motion carries.
I just want to recognize that Nate Day joined us a couple agenda items ago, so you have 8 members present. I just wanted to point that out.
All right, thanks. Thanks for joining us, Nate.
Yeah.
Let's move on to agenda item number 4, Red Tail Ridge Transportation Linkages.
Okay, so you've seen this project before. We were just alluding to it. Let me just back up here. I went too far. So out of the blue, we got these comments from our friends at the Metropolitan Planning Organization, which they are trying to offer this service more frequently now, especially as it relates to urban service area amendments, which is when a community is needing to seek permission to extend sewer and water mains into an undeveloped area. So whenever those requests happen, those go to the Regional Planning Commission, and the MPO staff then weigh in as well. And this was the result of them weighing in. They saw an opportunity to comment and provide specific comments on the transportation network. So that's why, so we got this in, when was that? So a month ago, very specific comments. A lot of them were already things that we had considered. I won't go through them all now. I presume, since they were in the packet, I presume you read it, and this is my response to them. So I guess without, oh, by the way, here's the design for Bellefontaine, showing the 10-foot path on the south side instead of the sidewalk. So I've responded to them. They don't have any oversight of this. They just giving us this guidance and offering to help us to make this a better project. And I just thought I would share it with you. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Since they recommended it and kind of as a reference to what became the first agenda item, are we at least going to stripe this on-street parking?
There's been no discussion of that.
Okay,
I mean, if, you know, we don't stripe on-street parking anywhere in the city, to my knowledge. I can't think of any examples anyway.
Right.
You know, maybe that's, I guess that's something that the committee can, you didn't comment on that specifically when we talked about downtown, but if you have.
no, it was brought up. It was brought up though by Tom.
Yeah, no, I know it was brought up, but you didn't, I mean, I didn't hear any feedback on whether you want us to proceed in that direction or not. I mean, we can have that as a separate agenda item sometime too, as policy discussion, but you're welcome.
No,
You're
I was
welcome to
just
discuss it now.
okay. Well, the rest of the committee knows how I feel about on-street parking in general. However, if we were to, one of my related contentions is that it doesn't actually do much for traffic calming unless it is occupied. If you do not stripe it and do not occupy it, then really you've just given a single car a 20-foot lane, and that's not slowing anybody down. So in this context, because of the previous mention, it would, if we want to provide accessible on-street accessible on-street parking, it helps to actually designate the parking areas. By the same, so we would need to at least paint it, but by the same token, if you want to have on-street parking that actually provides a traffic calming effect, whether it is occupied or not, it would be helpful to have at least parts of that parking designation be curb and gutter, like an actual physical barrier that people can see and know that just because there's no car there, they can't just use this area as their personal raceway.
It will have curb and gutter.
Okay. You like designating the back of a parking area or just the side?
Oh, just the side. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm talking about essentially is on-street parking as bays cut into the terrace.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Because
No.
otherwise, like I said, you're just giving someone a 20-foot wide lane that might be occupied.
So you're recommending that on-street parking be set into the terraces, set as bays into the terraces. And I can tell you, and I have no problem with that, but I think our plow drivers would. But so what this does, in other words, Tad, is at intersections, then you have a narrower crosswalk. You know, you have a shorter crosswalk for pedestrians. So I'm hearing that's what you're recommending as a design.
That's the direction I would like to move in. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I'm sure I understand that our snow removal people may not like it, but I'm sure that there are other snowy cities in the US and Canada, around the world, that are dealing with the same thing and doing just fine. So if we need to learn from somebody else, we can do that.
I think that's a good point. Can you
So
think of an
Mark,
example in Madison? I'm trying to think of an example in Madison where this is right now, so can just see it quickly too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there anywhere where we can get a visual of what it
I know
is that
exactly
you're-
what he's describing. I'm just trying to think of an example in the area. I think I found one. Well, no, I didn't. I was down on Bassett Street. I'm just trying to think. Tad, can you think of an example, or can anyone think of an example in the area?
No, I don't drive that much lately.
Yeah, I don't have one off the top of my head, but essentially, essentially what he's saying is, this kind, well, that's not quite right. But basically you'd have a curb extension, a bump out. Nate, the design, the term better than I do. You minimize the time that people spend in the crosswalk.
So at each intersection.
Here's an
you have-
example. This is a reasonably good example. So here, here's the parking lane on Wisconsin Avenue. Anyone who goes to the farmer's market has seen this. So, here's the parking in each direction. Obviously, what they're also doing is removing the island, but this is a large example of what Tad's talking about. Is having.
So kind of like what we have in Greenway Station.
Yeah, that's actually there you go. And we used to have it in downtown Middleton, but they were taken out. Yeah, I think Greenway has examples. Sorry about the blurriness here. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that. So it's kind of that idea. This has been changed, and now there's angled parking here, but it's the same concept where you've got the parking cut into the terrace, if you will, with the narrower. This is getting there as a concept. This is approaching what he's describing. Here's another example. Where actually this is a better example. So,
And again, that's down in Greenway, isn't it?
the Greenway next to the
ESW or whatever it is.
That's not there anymore, but Marshall's it says. So, yeah, that's a good example. Okay, well, I will pass that along as a design recommendation. Well, assuming actually, I mean, that's just one person speaking. How do others feel about that?
Yeah, I'm good with passing that along as a design option. I think that's something that I like the idea of, the shorter distance at the crosswalks. I like that idea.
Do you want the consensus of the committee to reflect that be incorporated into the design for the SAP, for the specific implementation plan?
Well, I want to hear from other committee members if they are also would be in favor of that.
Do you need a motion?
I'd like
Let me see.
to-
Let's see how the agenda reads.
I don't think it reads as an action item, does it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I said you'd want to discuss this additional information, Red Tail Ridge transportation linkages. If the consensus of the committee is to request staff to work with the developer to incorporate this in the design, I think that's perfectly appropriate. But I guess I'd like to hear if anybody disagrees with that.
How does everybody feel about that? Is everybody good with that?
I'm good.
Hearing no objections, then that would be the consensus of the committee, Mark.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay, that takes us down to, that was our last because we took last first. So North Mendota Trail project status.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and Dan, I'll let you do the honors because you made the observation today, so go ahead.
So I was driving back to Middleton from the east side of Madison today, and in front of the north side fire station and Sage Meadow and Dollar General, earth is being moved. And it looks like they're making the cutouts for the retaining wall. So progress has started for the spring. I'm happy to report. It's not going to get done as soon as I would have liked it to be done, but I think the latest date is June. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah. We're eyeing early June.
Yeah, well, I think they should be done by April 18th, but since they're not going to be, I guess we'll have to settle for June.
You've been talking to the mayor.
No, I spent a lot of time on this. I wasn't talking to the mayor.
Well, I'm just saying he made that comment too.
So any other comments? So I just want to make just a brief comment. This will be since there is not going to be an April meeting, this meeting is our March and April meeting. This will be my last meeting for Bike and Ped. I just want to say that I enjoyed I think I've been on this all 6 years of my term. Once as a member of the committee and for the last 5 years as the Plan Commission designee. And I've very much enjoyed my time on this committee. The only thing I'd like to say is we have done a lot of work this last year to be able to get this committee more involved in the road projects where there would be more of an input by the committee. So I would strongly encourage you to continue that. Mark has had some conversations with Sean Elsrud. So the Public Works Department, Sean, who does a lot of the road projects, is happy to work with Mark and to bring this stuff to the committee so that you'll be able to have more input at a much earlier time. Whereas in the last several years, it always seemed like we were running to catch up. But now we should actually be able to have some input. So anyway, that's my suggestion of the committee. The only other suggestion I would have in April, well, in May, that you'll have whatever new committee members there will be. I took office when we did everything in person, and then since then, as everybody knows, the pandemic, we now have done this hybrid. I would suggest for your organizational meeting anyway, there is, I feel, value in at least having one in-person meeting so everybody can get an opportunity to actually meet each other. Then the committee can decide whether they want to meet in person or virtually or hybrid. But I would just encourage you to take the opportunity when the turnover of the committee takes place to at least meet once in person so everybody has a chance to meet. I think there's great value in a personal face-to-face meeting, and then go on from there. But anyway, I'm enjoying my time on this committee. I appreciate everything that you all have done as far as volunteering to be part of it. I appreciate the passion that you brought, and thanks a lot, guys. With that,
and I just want to say, since just Dan, that as staff to the committee, I've really enjoyed working with you. I know we haven't always been as I haven't always been as proactive and focused on this committee as I would have liked to have been, but with some reshuffled priorities in the last year or so, I've been able to devote more time to this, and I really have enjoyed your chairmanship in particular, and I'm going to miss you.
well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. I'm gonna miss you all too. Thanks, Mark. With that out of the way, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn. Jim?
Right? Jim moves to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I second that
Thank
motion.
you. Thank you, Ella. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.